Tonight on Crimewatch.
The cruel gang and the 83-year-old fought back.
He told me to keep quiet, and I wouldn't.
The mugging 20 years ago that left a victim dying. And the forensic artist who's brought a picture of the killer back to life.
And tell us who this is, and you could help solve a murder.
And the latest clues on one of the country's most prolific serial rapists. It's the biggest manhunt in the country. It's had huge publicity. It has 100 officers drafted in full time, and it covers an area of more than 500 square miles. The victims have ranged from the age of 10 to a woman in her 50s. This is a community centre in the Stanhope Estate in Ashford in Kent. It's a good place for kids to meet up. But one evening last November, a motorist noticed someone staring intently at the club from across the road.
My daughter, she said, if I hadn't have gone out to get them posters in, Dad, it wouldn't have happened. And I had to stop her then and tell her off because it's nobody else's fault.
Quick, hurry up!
She didn't think he'd be any trouble to her because she thought he was picking somebody else up.
He's confident, which suggests a life of violence, grabbing from behind and quickly asserting control.
Walk. Pretend I'm your dad.
She said perhaps I should have screamed or shouted, but we've told her that she did everything right. If she'd done anything different, perhaps she wouldn't be here.
He's a risk taker. Each crime scene is busy with people passing by. When he started his assault, there were people only 30 feet away. He has weathered skin and may spend a lot of time outdoors. He often knows exactly where to take his victim. He seems to keep trophies from his victims. He took her orange T-shirt, and in almost every case he's stolen something. Once he took a victim's mobile phone and rang her mum to say he'd raped her daughter.
I'm going to be watching you. Count up to 500.
1.
The physical injuries have healed. We don't know how her mind's going to react in the future.
6.
That was last November, and the only known attack in Kent. Was he staying in Ashford for a short time for work? Is he in the building trade? Then a gap of reported rapes for 8 months until July, when he attacked another little girl in Bracknell, Berkshire. Just 10 days later, his next known victim was in Red Hill, Surrey, and this offered up more clues. The profiler thinks that given the choice, he may prefer blondes, but he'll go for anyone that's female, any race and any age, younger or older than himself. On the morning of this attack, he smelt clean. Had he stayed with you not far from Red Hill in July? But usually he smells of tobacco and of drink. If his victims try to look at him, he threatens them and hits them in the face hard.
If you scream or look at me, I'll kill you.
Six hours later, he attacked again on Putney Common in South London. The next rape was 5 days later in Woking. And by now, he was making headlines.
100 police from forces across southern England are searching for a serial rapist.
Renewed police activity on the scene of yet another attack in a series that is causing increasing concern. The man heading the Surrey investigations told me that women throughout the southeast must now be on their guard.
It was Tuesday, the 6th of August. I walk my dogs, or I did walk my dogs, every day on Wimbledon Common. I arrived at about 12 o'clock. I was actually feeling really quite happy that morning. We'd been walking for about 5 minutes. This man just literally slammed into the back of me.
Scream, you won't get hurt.
His voice was low and husky. I realised he was strong. He was muscly.
See this?
And he said, "It's a knife and I'm going to use it on you." And I realised this was serious.
Start walking. Can you feel the knife?
And he walked me back exactly the path I'd come along. And we went on walking, and he seemed to be really relishing in my distress. And I really thought, I don't just want to be a dead body that's found on Wimbledon Common and, you know, he's going to kill me anyway. I've just got to make a break and try and get back to my car. Almost immediately, he grabbed hold of me again and pushed me down. So I just, you know, let him get on with it. After he raped me, he said to me, he said, "Wait 5 minutes. Don't move for 5 minutes or I'll come back and slit your throat." And then he was gone.
There have been 3 more attacks since then. Who has the time to travel here during the day? If he works at all, does he do so in shifts or work on his own? And he may have a slight Geordie accent. If so, does he go home at the weekends?
The awful thing, I think, about rape is that it does make victims of the whole family. It's extraordinarily difficult for my children to have to cope with the fact that their mother was raped.
Well, the inquiry's now so big it's been run by an Assistant Chief Constable in Kent, David Kelly. This guy's got to have a criminal background. He can't do this from zero.
Now, we believe he has, and one of the groups of people we're appealing to are any professionals in the criminal justice system, police officers, prison officers, probation officers. Somebody's dealt with this man before, as you say.
It might not be for sex offences, presumably. It could be any sort of violence, theft, just anything. Keep a lookout for.
We would be amazed if he didn't have a criminal record.
What about psychiatric one? I mean, we postulated that, and I know that the profiler thinks it's quite a possibility that he's been in contact with psychiatric workers, social workers, or he's been in hostels. He's so dysfunctional.
Yes, he is, and again, we're appealing to people within that profession, counsellors, doctors, psychiatric nurses, and I think in this case the public safety considerations overcome professional worries about confidentiality and what have you.
Well, indeed, the professional bodies actually recommend in cases like this that people should come forward. And of course, there must be, if he really is in his 30s or 40s, there must be women, a whole trail of them behind him, who've suffered at his hands.
Hard to imagine that he wouldn't have a woman or women in his background, and so girlfriends, a partner, possibly a current partner, but probably ex-partners.
Then, what about his social life? I mean, is he so dysfunctional that he wouldn't have any friends, or would people... I mean, he must be drinking in pubs, or maybe he goes to off licences. You know, he's drinking in the morning, drinking at lunchtime, drinking early evening.
Yes. There must be somebody who knows this man quite well, either a work colleague, maybe an employer, ex-employer, somebody who just drinks with him. Somebody must know this man, and that's who we're appealing to.
I must say, if it feels as though you're looking for a needle in a haystack, actually, if you see the problem graphically, you'll see why you might be able to help solve this actually rather more easily than the police. They've got to start with something like 59 million people in the UK, of which at most 50 million will have the right sort of accent, and of those, some 25 million are males. That then narrows down to about 8 million in the right age group. Now, this is where you come in. Think of everyone you've met who fits so far, but is also roughly 5'6" to 5'9". That halves the numbers again. He's going grey around the edges. Not everyone has that. Not everyone has tanned, leathery skin. So he probably spends a lot of time outdoors. Not everyone's a smoker. The profiler is certain, as we've been saying, he'll have a criminal record, at least for theft or violence. Of course, you might not know about that. As we've been saying too, he's socially dysfunctional, so that he might have had psychiatric care or been in hostels. Again, as we say, he drinks during the day, and he has, or at least sounds as though he's got this gruff voice. Now, only a very small number of men fit into this group, maybe no more than a couple of hundred, but who are they? Above all, remember he must have been in these places in the last 12 months. Now, some of these are absolutes.
Yes.
Some you're not entirely certain about, like the psychiatric history, for example.
No, some of them may or may not be accurate, but it is worth considering. And something I think important to remember is that although all the offences have happened in the southeast, it may well be that this man is from another part of the country and is travelling into the southeast to either work, but certainly that's where he's committing offences.
And indeed this hint of a Geordie accent, so I mean, the northeast is a possibility, but again we've got to be very, very careful about that.
Yes.
You want names, you want really lots of names. You're not going to be overwhelmed if people ring in just on hunches, as long as a lot of these categories fit.
No, if any of the variables are ringing bells in people's minds, we want them to ring, because we have a DNA profile, and that enables us not only to trace this man, but also to eliminate any suspects very quickly.
OK, can I just repeat again something David was saying? If you are a professional, particularly a health professional, all the Royal Colleges, all the professional bodies accept that public safety overrides all privacy of medical and other issues in this. And if there's anybody you know who fits at least 4 or 5 of these issues, there's nothing that rules him out, please give us a call. The number's showing on your screen, 0500 600 600.
And at least by calling here, you can make a difference. Now the story of a rapist who's behind bars because of your calls. Last November, we appealed on a minicab driver who hung around London nightclubs offering cheap lifts. 2 women reported that he stopped the car en route and raped them. To add insult to injury, he still demanded that they pay their fare. There were some really strong leads. One of the victims had sketched a map of where she was attacked. Lots of viewers phoned us with suggestions, and as a result, police now think the rape took place near Harrow. Even more important, 2 callers gave us the same name for this EFIT, Melvin Stewart. Police took a DNA sample from him, and it matched.
He was arrested about 10 days after the appeal. There was 2 trials. The first trial, both victims gave evidence, but unfortunately, after they'd given evidence, the judge fell ill, so we had to have a retrial. I had grave concerns at the time that both victims wouldn't go through a trial for the second time, simply because of the trauma of giving evidence on the first occasion. It was only their strength of character and pleading to their public duty that they gave evidence.
Melvin Stewart was convicted last month and is likely to be in prison for about 6 years.
And he could be kept off the streets much longer if other victims have got the courage to come forward. So please call us if he also attacked you. And make sure you're not attacked yourself. There is 1 minicab rape a week in the capital. So you should never get into a minicab unless it's licensed and you've booked it.
Now, the criminals we want to catch with this next appeal are they're just despicable. They're a gang of 6 or 7 men targeting vulnerable people in the West Midlands. One of their victims, Flora Pritchard, tells her story. She's 83 years old.
Several of the victims have been attacked immediately after returning home. So far, we've linked 9 cases spread across the Midlands involving the same offenders.
Thank you.
Waiting to go forward. That's it, they look ready.
Thanks, love.
They're under starter's orders. They're off. Man and a quarter in front of them. Junique perhaps a little bit slower than the others to stride away. Roger and Man taking a fierce hold early on. Khaki paper silver towards the stand sign. Flinders
You from the council?
Yeah, I've come about the dam.
Well, I never looked to see whether he'd got a badge on, do you know. It was all on the spur of the moment. I says, oh, come in. Come in.
A psychological profiler has looked at the behaviour of the offenders, and it's his view that they are very practised and have probably been committing this type of offence since they were young.
It's in the things out the cupboard.
And I started getting a few things out of the cupboard, and he went to a cupboard on the wall, and as soon as he touched this tin, I said to him, "You're not a council worker."
Ken, we're being burgled. Leave him alone, you can see he's got a bad foot.
He pushed Ken up the corner, kept me in my chair. I was trying to get out all the while, because I wouldn't. He told me to keep quiet, and I wouldn't.
Oh, leave me alone.
I never realised that there were two of them, till this other one came in. I went parched, you know, my lips, and I said, "Oh, I want to drink," and I thought, oh, perhaps if I can get out this chair, you know, and go in the kitchen, I could make a dash like for the door.
I want a drink of water.
He'd fetch the water, this one, and he'd got his hand covered.
The two men often wear socks on one or both of their hands, and that reveals some forensic awareness.
Can you give me £20?
No, I can't. You've got it all. Those are my brothers.
Has he got any money?
No. What's he doing out there?
Why don't you leave us alone? You've got the money, now just go.
He stood up in front of me with these four legs facing me, and I did go quiet then. And I thought, oh dear, what's he going to do to me?
Say goodbye to her, Ken.
Leave us alone, just go.
First, number 1.
Can I wipe your face?
They tried to cover Flora's face with towels. This is consistent with what happened at other homes. The big guy seems to have a fetish for covering his victim's face with his hand, either from the front or sometimes from behind across the mouth.
Don't you touch me!
This is a way of intimidating the victim, dominating and humiliating them.
Number 21 and 50.
Flora, ring the police.
It's Mrs. Pritchard. You'll have to come quick. That two men have just been in and robbed us. They took our money. They took our door keys as well. Please come quickly. Please. Oh, God. Ken, are you all right?
The policeman took me over to a neighbour and made me a mug of tea. And then a policewoman came in to me. I says, no. I says, it's not true. I says, oh dear, what am I going to do without him?
This is a murder investigation. Ken died following a heart attack brought on by the stress and fear of the burglary. These offenders knew every time they attacked one of their elderly victims, eventually somebody would die.
The thing is, Clive, about these two men, they're not just cruel, they're cowards, aren't they? And you think they might have committed, what, as many as 9 similar burglaries?
Well, in fact, we're satisfied now that there are 11 offences committed by the same two men in towns across the Midlands.
And they always work together, do they, these two?
They do work together, but we're satisfied they're 2 amongst a team of 6 or 7 men who travel together to the crime scenes.
And what can you tell us about these two men?
We've got good descriptions. They're both white men. The taller fella is 6 foot or taller than that, slim build, in his late 20s with short dark hair. The smaller fella is very much smaller. The height difference is very striking. He's about 5 foot to 5'6", average build with short dark hair. But several witnesses describe him as having a face like a monkey, and 1 or 2 say that there's something very peculiar about his eyes.
And are they local, do you think?
No, I think they're to be found within the travelling community. The geographic profile of the offending is spread and suggests that they don't have a single domicile in or around the Midlands.
And the thing about them is they always carry out these burglaries in the same way. They always come in pretending they're from the waterboard, don't they?
Yes, they do. That's the trick used at the door, yes.
Now, in terms of getting away from the scene of the crime afterwards, they use a getaway car, don't they?
They do, and the vehicle that keeps turning up at these crime scenes is actually a dark Volvo Estate, probably an 850 model.
And this is driven by other members of the gang?
Yes, it is.
There was one phone call you got after you started looking into this crime that you want that person to call again. Just tell us a bit about that.
On the third day of the investigation, a chap with an Irish accent telephoned the incident room and actually gave us some information about who one of the offenders may be and described that individual and seemed to speak with some knowledge of the attack. I would appeal to that man to call back. We have developed the information as best we can, but we just need a bit more help to finish the picture.
Okay, well, tonight is the night to call. If that was you who made that call, call the studio here. And take a good look at those two EFITs again. Where are those two men? And think of Flora and her husband, Ken.
He was a good husband. 50 years we'd have been married. I think it was made for me, and I was made for him, you know. Because sometimes things are like that, aren't they?
People who did this to Flora are cruel beyond belief. Distraction and burglaries are a real problem, but do remember, if you're over 60 years old, you're 4 times less likely to be a victim of crime than people who are younger.
Now one of the most bizarre cases. It's another one that's been in all the papers, but this time no one knows for definite if there's even been a crime. It's the disappearance of this couple from North Wales on a trip to Spain. Linda and Tony O'Malley had gone to the Costa Blanca for a couple of weeks in August to see if they could find a place to buy. They hired a car at Malaga Airport, they visited estate agents and they transferred some cash. But they and their car have disappeared, along with all their savings. This is Tony's brother, Bernard, Linda's daughter, Nicola, and the investigating officer, Nick Crabtree. Nicola, this is really just ghastly for the family. What do you think now, after 6 weeks or so, has happened?
6 weeks down the line, obviously the family are very, very concerned, and now obviously we're getting worried about scenarios and whether they're they've been kidnapped or indeed if they're well. It's very, very troubling and very worrying for us all.
Nick, you're certainly investigating this as a missing persons inquiry, aren't you?
We are. I mean, it's 6 weeks now down the line, no sightings, a substantial amount of money's been withdrawn from their bank account, and on top of that, somebody else is spending on the O'Malley's credit cards.
Bernard, I mean, how do you know it's not your brother who's spending this money?
Well, today there's no CCTV coverage of who it is, but that's being worked on by the Spanish police at the moment. But we do know that a large man bought an extra large Burberry jacket on the 14th of September, and earlier than the 14th, a size 11 pair of trainers was purchased.
Size 11? Size 11
or 12.
And Anthony takes what size?
Well, Anthony takes size 8, and he's of slim build. I mean, the biggest jacket he would wear would be a medium.
Now, the other worrying thing is this withdrawal of huge amounts of cash. They transferred money. Now, that's not surprising. They were trying to buy a property. But why take it out in cash?
Well, Anthony's been to Spain many times, so he is streetwise, and but he's also careful with money. Has he been lured into a cash deal and been observed taking a large cash withdrawal from the bank, which we know does go on in Spain from other cases, and he's been observed and then something's happened. We know that it's happened. We believe it's happened on Friday the 13th because all seemed normal at dinner time in the Hotel Melia, and the cash was withdrawn a couple of hours later. So what's gone wrong, we believe, has gone wrong there and then.
You've all been over to Spain, haven't you, to talk to the police there. And Nick, what have you been able to find out about when they were last seen?
Well, they were last seen on Friday the 13th, and we know that Linda visited a Spanish property agent and actually told that agent that she was due to fly home that day. So it is, as you said, bizarre.
Have the Spanish police been cooperating? I mean, are they really putting their heart and soul into this?
Yeah, I've been over. I've met with my Spanish counterpart over there, and I'm happy now that they are following up all relevant lines of inquiry.
Bernard, one of the interesting things about Crimewatch is how many people in Spain manage to see this programme, but of course we've also got a lot of viewers who go across there on business or on holiday. Now, if they have, what are the crucial dates? What are you hoping that they've seen?
Well, we're really desperate to find out. There's no details of whatsoever of where Anthony and Linda stayed between the 4th of September and the 13th of September. And no identification of any restaurants or bars he visited. If anybody has had a meal with them or been any conversation, the family really would appeal to that. Somebody somewhere knows something, and the family would really appeal to that somebody. Please get in touch, no matter how trivial you may think the information you have is.
And there is one thing that could lead to them, isn't there? Because there's their hire car, and that's gone missing as well.
Yeah, that's a blue Fiat Stylo 8588 BTT. That was due to be off-hired at Malaga Airport again on Friday the 13th. Where is it? We don't know.
Nicola, you must, as you say, now fear for their safety. Just, let us hope beyond hope they're alive and they can see this. What would you say to them?
Just, let us know you're okay and just get in touch and tell us, that everything's fine and that, just get in touch.
But it is completely out of character for them not to do so.
It's just so much out of character that, it's just unbelievable. They're just not this type of people.
Well, the Spanish police are doing what they can. You've heard the British police are. Let's see what we can do. Please, don't give us sightings all around the world. We're concerned with the Costa del Sol or the area immediately around there, about 50 miles around there. If you know anything or saw anything there or Costa Blanca, give us a call. Now from the National Crime and Operations Faculty, here's Detective Sergeant Jackie Haynes.
And this is where some of our best results come from. Faces from CCTV. After chatting to the young assistant and then paying him for a can of drink, this man then threatened to blow his head off if he didn't hand over the contents of the till. He's Asian, has a distinctive beer gut and may have escaped in a white Toyota car driven by an accomplice. This man asked the assistant for some green Rizzlers, then threw himself across the counter. Despite being pushed out of the way, she managed to prevent him grabbing cash from the till. We think he's done the same thing at a number of off-licences across Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Hampshire because he always asks for those green Rizzler papers. In the early hours of a Thursday morning in July, these two men were caught on the CCTV of a computer IT company in Staines, Middlesex. Oblivious to the cameras, they made their way round the offices, stealing laptops from desks. We only have stills of this man, but they are very clear. Last Christmas, he threatened two bank cashiers, one in Buckinghamshire and the other across the border in Berkshire. On the second occasion, he clearly had a gun. He demanded cash, but fortunately, bank security systems foiled the raids. Let's stop him being more successful in the future. If you can help with any of these cases, please call us on 0500 600 600.
About 150 calls so far on the trophy rapist, a huge number of calls actually. We're getting quite a lot of interesting names. We've got one here which is particularly interesting because this guy was in prison for the almost precise period where the attacks stopped, and although we've got no name coming up twice yet, we've got 9 that are in the right area where an awful lot of the criteria fit, so they're looking certainly interesting. Incidentally, if you're finding difficulty getting through on this serial rapist issue, there's the local number you can ring for the incident room on 0845 601 8109. Coming up, tell us who this is and help to solve a murder. First, from Sussex Police, here's Detective Chief Superintendent Jeremy Payne.
Terry McCann has been charged with sexual offences committed against 2 young girls. He turned up at court once but then vanished. He's 5'11" with tattoos on both arms, and you may also know him as Frank Holder, Alan Nash or Anthony Baldwin. We need to speak to Ali Hagju about an attack on a woman on New Year's Day. The victim was dragged into an alleyway and sexually assaulted. Fortunately, the attacker was disturbed and then ran off. Reportedly, Hagju has a mole under his left eye and could now be living in London. If you're a Sheffield United football fan, you might recognise the face of your ex-chairman, Paul Woolhouse. He failed to turn up to explain the disappearance of millions of pounds. Since 1994, he's been spotted in America, the West Indies, Australia and Italy. Just check out his face. He may have changed his name. My colleagues in Merseyside want to trace William Hughes, who's from Liverpool. He may have information about the murder of Eugene Furlong in the Rose and Crown pub in Huyton in May.
You're about to see some of the worst security we've ever encountered. Ironically, it's a security company that's involved. To prevent copycat crimes, we've disguised the firm's identity. But what we're about to show you is a van that often contains very substantial sums in cash.
Our job is mainly delivering valuables and cash to various places. At Gatwick, we transfer money from place to place around the airport.
That morning, a delivery had been cancelled, so the crew had a lot of time in hand.
I can't get in for another hour.
Yeah, good time for a kit then.
Good idea.
One went into the back to use the cash as pillows. The other dozed in the front. They slept till roughly 6:45 a.m.
Wakey, come on.
Time for one of the guards to go on a chain of collections and deliveries to shops in the airport terminal.
See you later.
The driver noticed a man who was hanging around in the service tunnel. He was black, with a black hat. Either he was up to no good, or else he might be an important witness. At around 7 a.m, a British Airways bus was passing through the tunnel. The driver noticed a man with an old blue helmet crouching beside the security van.
I thought the knock on the side of the van was my mate returning.
Get up! Get in the back of the van! Don't look at me! Get in the back! Don't look at me! Please, look at that wall!
Don't shoot me!
He was white but tanned, aged about 30, medium height to tall, and with a goatee beard.
Keep your eyes shut. Shut your eyes. Don't you look at me. Only 2 bags!
When he shouted that only 2 bags, it sounded like he was talking to someone outside. He grabbed my head, and then he kicked me in the face.
The robber had vanished by the time the other guard returned. But this man in a fluorescent jacket seems to be carrying cash bags. Did he make off in a silver Renault Clio? When CCTV tapes were examined, this one was seen repeatedly before the robbery, and his registration number is false. We haven't named the security company, but not surprisingly, the procedures have since been radically overhauled. They've also put up a reward of £30,000.
These cases might often seem impossible for viewers to solve, but they do get solved time and time again.
Anthony Kitchener was wanted for rape and indecent assault against children. We showed his face back in March. Several viewers called in with an address in Havant in Hampshire, and he was arrested before midnight that same night. He's just been sentenced to 10 years. And not surprisingly, a lot of people recognised Liam Ford. He's the ex-Plymouth Argyle footballer we showed on our programme in June. After Jackie showed his face on Crimewatch, the heat was on, and he handed himself in last month. He's been convicted of drug offences and is awaiting sentencing.
We often hear about gangsters, robbers and murderers leaving this country and trying to start a new life overseas, and it's occasionally hard to get them back through extradition. But what about people who are wanted for terrible crimes abroad and then come to live here in the UK? Here's Detective Sergeant Jackie Haynes.
Any ship or plane that comes to the UK may well contain a fugitive fleeing from justice abroad. And each year we get hundreds of requests to look for people. In fact, there's a dedicated unit at New Scotland Yard that does the legwork, and tonight they've asked us to show you 6 cases that are still outstanding.
So far this year, we've arrested 105 people for extradition. In simple terms, we would extradite or assist any country with which the UK has an extradition agreement. If the country had the death penalty, they would have to make an undertaking not to impose that sentence if the person was extradited to their country.
These are the unit's 6 most wanted faces, all believed to be in the UK right now. Mohammed Guled is wanted in Canada for a murder during an argument about drugs. He escaped to Britain straight afterwards and has recently been seen around Woolwich in southeast London. This next suspect caused huge waves in Germany. He's a former government minister called Dr. Ludwig Fahls. He left the country amid claims that he accepted a bribe to sell German army tanks when they were needed by his own country. He could be anywhere in the UK and could be using a false name. Thai police are looking for Lisa Marie Smith on suspicion of drug smuggling. She was released after her father paid her bail and hasn't been seen since. She's originally from Southampton and is known to come and go from the UK. But where is she now? Reginald Blythen is on the run from Denmark. He's wanted for a murder charge. He has connections in Hampshire and Chester, and he may even have his 2 Jack Russell dogs with him. Ivor Davis from Canada lost control of his car and killed another driver as well as injuring a passenger. When a blood sample was taken, he was over the limit. We know he's got family in Kent and the West Country. Albania now. Genshin Take was convicted in his absence of a murder committed in 1999. Shortly afterwards, he came here under the name Arben Gashi. He's now thought to be in either Essex or North London.
At the end of the extradition process, when the prisoner's been ordered to be surrendered from the country, it's the job of my unit to take that person to the airport, hand them over to the officers from the other country to collect, and when we've seated the person on the aeroplane, that's the end of our job.
6 faces, all believed to be in the UK right now. Tell us where they are. 0500 600 600.
There's also a special incident room set up tonight to take any calls on them, and you can call them direct on 020 7230 2449.
3 months ago, a man's skeleton was found in a swamp in Lancashire. Police know he was killed by blows to the head. There wasn't much else to go on. No clothes, no jewellery, no personal possessions, and no idea what the man looked like. Well, until now. The officer leading the investigation went to an expert who's reconstructed hundreds of faces.
I was asked by the police to give a view on how the injuries were caused to the skull, how the fractures occurred. They're not caused by anything like a sharp implement, that's definite, but there's certainly evidence there that they were caused by something pretty blunt and heavy. The face then is moulded onto the skull. We then take that face, put it into an EFIT system, which is an electronic identikit type system, which allows us to put on hair, put in eyes. The mouth, we get good clues sometimes from the shape of the teeth as to what the mouth might look like, and also some racial characteristics sometimes will help us. He did have a fairly slightly built skull, and this is quite typical of a lot of Asian males.
So Mick, you had this clay head made, and you've also got this computer-generated image now. What does all that tell you about who this man is?
What we've been able to piece together is that he's a man in his 20s, probably about 27, 28. He's 5'7" to 5'8" inches tall. He's almost certainly an Asian male, and he's a very, very slim build. What we also know is he's got some kind of deformity to his legs or his hips, which he'll have had from childhood, or possibly from birth.
Would he have had a limp, do you think?
We think it's quite likely he would have had a limp, or maybe leant to one side to compensate for a disability.
And the thing that struck me when I looked at the clay head is one, how small it is. He's obviously a very slight man. And also the nose is very distinctive. It's kind of slightly wonky nose.
That's correct. He is very, very slight. The head and shoulders that you see is actually life-size. And if you put that together with his potential limp and the fact he's got very distinctive facial features, I feel sure that'll ring a bell with somebody.
And he was killed by a blow to the head. Have you any idea what was used to do that?
We've no idea. All we can say is he had a number of blows to the head and they've led to serious fractures of the skull.
The skeleton was found in a swamp at Charnock Richard. Have you any idea how long it would have been there?
We don't know precisely because there's a lot of variables, obviously the climate, animal activity, bacteria activity, what the water was like, but we do know it's been there for several months, certainly since March of this year, probably quite a lot longer, but perhaps no longer than 2 years.
So up to 2 years. And do you think, I mean, given the fact that It was just the body there. There were no possessions, no clothes, no personal possessions at all. Do you think he was actually killed there or killed somewhere else and then the body dumped there?
Well, as you can imagine, we've done an awful lot of enquiries in Lancashire. There's been an awful lot of media coverage and we haven't been able to identify him. So my instinct is that he's been killed elsewhere and brought to Lancashire for his body to be concealed.
And the area is just off the motorway, isn't it? So I suppose he could have been climbed almost anywhere and then driven to this spot.
That's right. Most people know Charnock Rich as a motorway service station on the M6, and where this body was found is about 200 metres from the motorway.
Right, well, take a look at this clay head again. Someone must know who he is, and as you've heard, the police think he's probably Asian, because we have got a translator here in the studio who speaks a number of Asian languages, so you can call here, or you can call the incident room if you like on 01257 246 246.
Let's see if you can help solve a cold case now. Come with us back to Hoddesdon in Hertfordshire in 1982. Everything you see and hear comes directly from witness statements.
I was at home with my husband. My father phoned me early hours of the morning and said that there'd been an accident.
Be careful.
Help me. Call an ambulance, quick! I've been stabbed.
Oh, Mal!
Tell him he's been stabbed! Don't move, okay? I'm just gonna get a towel to stop the blood. What's happened? Just knocked on the door. He says it's been stabbed. Has an ambulance been called?
Yes, I called one when I called you.
I'm Tosca 70H. Can you confirm ambulance en route to this stabbing, St Catherine's Road?
An ambulance will be in a second. Can you tell me your name?
Keith Church, Broxbourne.
Can you tell me what happened?
He was in a car, asked for my money. I wouldn't give it to him, so he did this to me.
What type of car was it?
I don't know. Cortina or Viva. It was red. I'm not very good on cars.
Can you remember what he looks like?
No, never seen him before. He was a stranger to me.
Keith would have liked to be remembered as a calm, laid-back person who enjoyed listening to music, painting his pictures. They were painted with passion, always.
He was a deep thinker as well. That's behind all his paintings and his writings.
Keith's poetry was very important to him. He shared his thoughts and feelings by writing it down.
Is love the key of reality, the balance, the uniform agent? Is it love, real love? Unselfish but to itself, love above all.
Just got to 27, he'd got to that point in his life where he was starting to look to the future.
You still haven't got a tail light.
Yeah, I know. There's nobody about anyway.
And what if the driver doesn't see you?
Look, I'll be fine, honestly.
Talk tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow then.
Yeah. Be careful.
Someone who knew Keith was driving down Hoddesdon High Street.
Hey, you! Give us some money! No way!
He was horrified to see Keith peddling for all he was worth to escape a man who was obviously extremely aggressive. But Keith seemed to be getting away, so he decided not to stop.
Yeah, we were told he'd been in an accident or something, and we all went to the police station, but by the time we actually arrived at the police station, we had been told that he had died on the way to hospital.
There's a sadness. There's just that sadness there, always. That sense of loss. Somebody is missing.
OK, it was a long time ago and the clues are rather thin, but there are Keith's dying words about the mugging, and there is that dramatic sighting by the motorist who knew Keith. But the trouble is that the artist's impression is 20 years out of date. So we took it to Oriel Prince, who's an expert at ageing pictures for the National Missing Persons Helpline.
We're starting off with a possible likeness, so we're not even starting with a photograph of what he looked like. So everyone's really got to keep an open mind about this. What I've concentrated on here is obviously to keep as close as possible to the original composite. But generally, when somebody ages, everything tends to go south. It looks like he originally had quite bushy eyebrows. Now, I think that, I mean, this could go either way. As you get older, they could either get thinner, they could thin out, or they could get much thicker. And I think probably in this case they would have got much thicker. So I'm going to keep them a little bit thicker than they were originally. The eyes tend to slightly sink back into the eye socket, so they tend to get a little bit smaller, and the skin tends to fold around the edges of the eyes, which is one of the things that really has an impact and does make someone look a lot older. The jaw line, that area of the chin, really is affected by age and gravity pulling everything down. I think from the original description that he was quite a stocky man, that he would have put on a lot more weight around the chin area, and that's one of the most noticeable places of where people do age. So all this has got to be taken into consideration.
Remember, he was terribly aggressive then, so he still may be aggressive now. And of course, he'd be in his mid-50s today. Stocky or fat, 5'10". Did he confess this to somebody? If so, there's a £10,000 reward. But in any case, there's Keith's family, who can't rest until he's found. 0500 600 600.
Crimewatch has a very good record in assisting police investigations of cold cases. Here are 2 murder inquiries that have made some significant progress. In June, we reconstructed a murder that took place in 1987. The victim was private investigator Daniel Morgan. Someone had put an axe through his head. Police investigations have now resulted in 2 arrests, and officers now want to identify a pale green VW Polo that may have been used in connection with the murder.
We featured another cold case last month. Jeff Small was shot dead in his newsagents in Sutton in 1976. Police have now charged 1 man with the murder and made a further arrest.
Well, let me just fill you in on the calls we've had so far. Just picking up this sheet here about the serial rapist in the southeast of England. We've had more calls on that than anything else. But so far, no names have been mentioned more than once. The murder of Kenneth Pritchard, if you remember, that was the elderly couple in Wolverhampton with the distraction burglars that came and were so cruel to that elderly couple. The same names have come in twice. Let me just show you those EFITs again. The 2 men, one was particularly tall, about 6 foot. The other one remarkably short, noticeably short, 5 foot, though maybe up to 5'6". As I say, we've had the same names coming in twice, so that's very encouraging. Other people who think they have been burgled by these same people, obviously we're going to give those names straight away to the investigating team. We're still waiting for that one person to call in who did call the police early on in this investigation, who said he knew who these 2 people were. If that's you, we want to hear from you. Call us now.
Still to come, who murdered Alexander Blue? A case that's left everybody baffled. And we'll be telling you how a Crimewatch reconstruction helped convict a multi-millionaire involved in murder.
3 months ago, James Boyes failed to turn up at Lewis Crown Court to answer 17 charges of serious sexual offences involving teenage girls back in the 1980s. In the past, he's worked in pubs and organised race nights. He's pretty short at 5'5", with a Scottish accent and a noticeable scar on his forehead, so he's in your local. Amphibian Salim sat all the way through his trial, but didn't bother to turn up for the most important part. On the last day, he was sentenced to 4 years imprisonment for indecently assaulting a woman with severe learning difficulties. He originates from Iraq, and he could have shaved off that beard.
The child protection team at Worcester need to speak with Maurice Carr after 2 children reported serious sexual abuse. Maurice Carr has a Yorkshire accent, but he moves around the country and is probably using false ID. His favourite type of work is as a double glazing salesman. We're also keen to find Charles Heffer, who could be involved in a paedophile ring and sharing child pornography on the internet. He's run off from his job as a local supermarket manager and has been recently seen in London.
Everyone wants to help protect children, and as it happens, Jeremy Payne, as head of Sussex CID, is involved in a new scheme that's called Child Rescue.
That's right. Last month I went to America to study the Amber Alert scheme that's been pioneered in a number of states. As soon as it's established that a child's been abducted and could be in danger, police activate an alert that goes straight to television and radio. Broadcasts are immediately interrupted to give out information about the child and the suspect. Even motorway signs are used. Now the entire community is instantly galvanised and there's clear evidence that the scheme has saved lives. Now I want to bring it here. We're calling it Child Rescue, and next month it will start in Sussex. And my hope is that it'll spread right across the country.
Of course, child abduction is very rare. In fact, after the Sarah Payne case that Jeremy led, there wasn't a single child abduction by a stranger for a year. But if this could save one life, well, it's got to be worth a try.
Let me tell you now about another case about Alexander Blue. Alex was the archetypal local boy made good, a successful car dealer who lived and worked in the West End of Glasgow and operated a company called the Taxi Centre. But we need to find out a lot more about him. On a Monday afternoon in June, Alex visited the city centre and then went back to the West End. An acquaintance thought he might have had a briefcase, though that would have been unusual. Certainly he didn't have a case at 7 p.m, when he got to the Bean Scene Coffee House in Cresswell Street. He was a regular here, and one of the staff overheard him say he was going to a meeting later on that night.
I can go with her.
Who was that meeting with?
Sure.
Call us if you know.
Who are you?
Alex had a visitor at home in Downhill later on that night. A neighbour out for a cigarette heard voices. And at 12:05 there was a scuffling in the darkness on the gravel drive.
Did you hear that noise outside?
No, but I heard Alex's door slam.
Another neighbour was so concerned by a disturbance, he dialed 999. Alex was found lying on the drive with serious injuries.
I got a phone call, my son had phoned to tell me to come home and then up to the hospital. He just held his hand and told him everybody was with him. We all loved him.
2 days later, Alex died. Now, there are 4 people police would like to talk to. First, a man standing at around 1415 Dundonald Road at about 10:15 p.m. on Monday the 24th of June. Next, a bodybuilder type who was leaning on a black 5 Series BMW in Observatory Road, just round the corner. Third, a smartly dressed man in his 50s. He may have stopped to listen to some shouting, but no one could work out where it came from. Fourth, a man who looks something like this. He was seen some days before the murder coming out of Alex's flat. When I talked to the police about the case, what really struck me was just how little is really known about Alex Blue, about who his friends are, what his hobbies are, what he does in his spare time. If you know, please tell us and help find his murderer. And there's a £25,000 reward.
The biggest volume of calls we're taking is still on the trophy rapist. In fact, I think so many. We've got the ACC in charge of the case, Dave Kelly here. Really, we can't take any more here in the studio because they're sort of blowing all the others out of the water.
Yes, and a fantastic response so far, but I would ask people to be patient and use our dedicated number and not to call them the other headquarters numbers.
Yeah, well, in fact, what's happening at the moment, people are dialing 999, they're dialing other headquarters numbers, and it's a real problem. So please, there is a dedicated number. Try that one, please. Now, tell us about some of the calls you're beginning in terms of quality.
A good range, a number of calls from professionals that we've appealed to in the criminal justice and the psychiatric side of things. Also a large number of calls from the North East and some very interesting ones from women who have had suffered violence in the past, and the description of ex-partners is matching our description of our suspects.
And are they actually coming through with names?
We've had quite a few names, yes, so there's a lot of work for us to do here.
We were wondering whether this guy was a loner or whether he'd actually have acquaintances, people who worked with him and so forth. Are you getting anything on that?
No, not so far. So again, let's ask people to see if those any bells ringing, but to keep ringing in for us.
Let's just remind ourselves that this guy, there's an awful lot of qualities which we know about this chap. Yes. He's 5'6", 5'8". We know he's from a sort of a part of England because of his accent. We know that he's got a gruff voice, certainly when he commits these attacks. Yes. He may have had a psychiatric history. He's fairly dysfunctional. I mean, there are actually quite a lot of things that narrow down what this sort of guy should be. Anyway, you're fairly confident with the sort of calls you're getting so far?
Yes, absolutely fantastic response. So I'd ask people to just keep thinking about those variables and keep ringing in for us.
If there's any one thing that you still want, above all, people to ring in on this, what is it?
We want his name. That's what we want. We want his name.
And the point you made earlier, if people are worried, they say, well, look, hang on, several of these things sort of fit with somebody I know. I am worried about it, but heavens, I don't want to get into trouble. You've got DNA.
Yes, we have. We've got DNA, so we can eliminate people very quickly. But we do need that name very quickly to stop him reoffending.
Well, we'll tell you more about this later on this evening. It must be said, Crimewatch viewers have a fabulous track record of success. And even when Crimewatch can't produce the answer, lots of our cases are still eventually solved. Here are some you may remember.
You may recall our reconstruction on Sinead Healy's murder. The body was found in a lay-by in Beaconsfield in Buckinghamshire. When Crimewatch failed to produce new leads, detectives made further inquiries into her former boyfriend, Kenneth Lynch. In July, he was found guilty of her murder and was sentenced to life.
Michael Wheatley was released early from a 27-year sentence for armed robbery. Within 3 weeks of getting out, he committed the first of 13 more armed robberies. He was arrested by flying squad officers this April, and last month at the Old Bailey was given 13 life sentences.
In 1999, Mohammed Raja was shot dead at his house in Sutton. Forensic evidence led to 2 hitmen who were convicted of the murder. But they'd been hired by cricket tycoon Nicholas van Hoogstraten, and he was tripped up by our reconstruction. He blurted out a detail of the shooting that we deliberately withheld. Found guilty of manslaughter, he'll be sentenced tomorrow. Despite the fact we're getting so many calls on the serial rapes in South East London, some of you still managed to get through on our other cases. On the Kenneth Pritchard murder, do you remember that murder in Wolverhampton, the distraction burglars? So cowardly and so cruel, and there was a death as a result of that. We did have 2 names mentioned more than twice. We're now getting more names through, again mentioned more than twice. We're getting very good information on that. We are still, though, waiting for that one phone call of that one man who rang into the police who had specific information about those 2 burglars. Don't hide who they are. What they've done is despicable. If you know about them, ring tonight. And just quickly on the Gatwick robbery as well, the security van robbery, we've had a lot of information on that too. Any more information on that, please call. The phone lines are busy, but you will get through. Please keep trying.
And above all, please don't ring 999 if you've got information. All the numbers of the incident rooms are on CFAX on page 621. Now, our phone lines here will be open till midnight tonight, and again from 7:30 tomorrow morning until midnight tomorrow. So we'll be back at 10:35 with the Crimewatch update. We'll have more to tell you then. Meantime, of course, don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.